Hello and welcome to On the Record, a debate-style television talk show where Bahamians will find the balanced, true and open debate they've been looking for. Much ado has been made about Oban Energy since the government of the Bahamas signed a heads of agreement in February for the construction of a $5.5 billion oil refinery and storage facility complex in East Grand Bahama. This facility could commence construction by the beginning of next year. Oban Energy said the Bahamas was its first and only choice for the location of this facility. Bahamians from across the political divide are now up in arms about the stains in the agreement, from the signing before the environmental impact assessment to what some term shady background of the investor. During the heads of agreement signing, the investor insisted that protecting the environment is paramount to Oban. Just what is the government's intention in this predicament? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Tonight we discuss Oban Energy's deal of a lifetime or questionable partners. Our guest tonight is Queen's Counsel Wayne Munro, representing the Progressive Liberal Party. The Free National Movement was invited on the show to discuss this very important topic, but once again declined. It's all on the record. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. We are back right after this.
Hi, I'm Davriel and welcome to Rev Tips, where we answer your most important Rev service questions. Today's questions are all about RevGo Play, the new TV Everywhere app from Rev. How many devices can I use RevGo Play on per Rev TV account? You can use up to 3 devices on RevGo Play per Rev TV account, and you can stream live 2 devices simultaneously. How do I record my favorite shows on RevGo Play? Simply select your favorite show, select record, and choose between current or series recording. How many NDV hours do I have and when do they expire? You can record up to 20 hours of content using your RevGo Play NDVR. Your recorded content will remain in your storage folder for up to 30 days. How do I activate Catch Up TV or start over? If you've just tuned into your favorite show but want to start from the beginning, simply select Restart. If you have more questions about RevGo Play, feel free to visit the RevGo Play page on cablebahamas.com or call our support team at 601-2200.
Are you afraid to swipe your card and you don't like to carry cash? If so, you need checks. Executive Printers can make checks for all your needs. They have laser checks, personal checks, continuous checks, and more. All checks have up to 15 security features, so you know you'll be protected. You can even customize your checks. Come and see one of our experts today or log on to epbahamas.com for more info.
Welcome back to On the Record. This evening, Queen's Counsel and former PLP candidate Wayne Munro is my guest. We also gave the Free National Movement an opportunity to defend itself amidst a lot of allegations made by the opposition and others, but the FNM has opted not to. Be that as it may, our topic goes on tonight. We're talking about Oban Energy's deal of a lifetime or questionable partners. Wayne, welcome back to On the Record. It's good to have you back again. Last time you were here, we were discussing another topic and nobody from the other side showed up. So I don't know if it's a trend or maybe it's just you.
No, well, I think they may have the attitude that it's 35-4, so they don't have to show up to defend themselves to the people.
Let's see how that pans out. Well, talking about the Oban deal, I want to talk a little bit about the project up front and put it into context so people understand exactly what it is government is proposing. So this is a $5.5 billion oil refinery project for East Grand Bahama. Calls for a storage facility for up to 4 million barrels of crude oil and a harbor, a deep sea loading dock, and a 50,000 barrel a day refinery. It also calls for a 20 million barrel liquid bulk storage facility and a 250,000 barrel per day refinery. So that's what the project is looking like on the ground, if you can begin to now conceptualize that. Now, in terms of what they want to do, it's saying here create 600 direct jobs, 1,000 indirect in the construction phase, 250 direct full-time jobs during operations at a ratio of 80% Bahamian, 20% non-Bahamian, particularly in the construction phase. On the surface, seems like a good thing for Grand Bahama. Economy has been in a slump for a long time. Not a lot going on in East Grand Bahama. There's an existing facility there. So on the surface, seems like a pretty good deal.
Well, not if you actually read the heads of agreement.
Before we get to the heads agreement, just on the surface, it looks like something that could benefit the
I think it's important that you read the heads of agreement because that is what is described as what is proposed. Correct? What they agreed to is that the parties agreed that neither the estimated investment in the oil refinery or the terminal reference in the recital shall be deemed to create or imply any material obligation herein with respect to any specific investment by the developer, nor shall any provision in Section 3 hereof be deemed to create or imply any material obligation of the developer.
So what is that?
That is the picture they paint for you, but in Clause 16.2 of their heads of agreement, they have agreed that the developer does not have to do any of that because it creates no material obligation with regard to any specific investment. So they painted a picture, and what they signed is far different from the picture they painted, much like the guy signing someone else's name. You think he's signing his, you think that's it.
All right, we'll address that further on.
It seems to be throughout. So if you start from the conceptual level, what they have agreed to is nothing specific at all. And that is what they signed off on.
So there is something that has an economic projection. Nobody's quite sure where it came from, but says that it could improve GDP by 10.13%, unemployment reduction from 15.7 to 15.26%. This is from direct and indirect employment. Overall, projected increase of foreign direct investment net flow could make the Bahamas #1 in real GDP growth across Latin America and the Caribbean. And let me position that by saying we're not quite sure where this information comes from.
Well, the fact that you have to say that and the fact that you've had acknowledged deceptive practices to this point is what is troubling. When one looked at the other two major heads of agreement signed by former FNM governments, Atlantis and Bahama, right? I know personally, because having been involved in the Bahama litigation, you have an economic assessment produced by somebody of standing. I think it was the Harvard group in Bahama. And so you don't have to worry, be able to find yourself saying, I don't know where these figures come from. If there are only 250 permanent jobs, 600 during construction, the ratio is 80-20 if you could find 80% Bahamians. It'd be 480 Bahamians during construction, not 600.
So this is the construction phase, and that's important to point out.
On the assumption that you can find 80% qualified Bahamians in this type of construction, because the agreement says if you can't, it could go to as low as you can. And then in operation, you're talking about 160. How 480 and 160 reduces in unemployment by those numbers, one would like to see the economic impact assessment. And I believe that the PLP, my party, and the press, the media, needs to start to call for that. Because certainly, before the government decides to give out a bunch of concessions, it must have entertained an argument that here is what you're giving us, here is what we're giving you, and these are the impacts. This project will pay no taxes. And so, unlike a hotel where they have hotel room taxes, casino taxes, tourists come here, spend money on which taxes are clean, the stuff is bought in, duty-free, attracts no taxes. The land attracts no taxes. It's exported duty-free. And so the revenue is something that one would have to see in this assessment where they say it's from. It's smoke and mirrors. And so we oughtn't to trust them that this is happening. We ought to demand that they produce it.
On the issue of taxes, it says Oban receives full tax exemptions for a period. If the company does not create the specified number of jobs promised and does not meet certain performance milestones, tax benefits and concessions will be reduced to a proportionate level. Now, it is not uncommon for investments of this magnitude, hotel investments you mentioned in the past, to receive tax concessions. It's always a political football that's kicked around whenever a project comes in. There's always screams of, oh, we've made all these concessions for the project. But what makes this one so different?
What makes this one so different is when you look at all of the ones that I am aware of, they follow a particular pattern. In fact, it was said that the former administration approved this project, and that is not so. It was approved in principle, subject to you producing certain things.
Right.
And you sign the heads of agreement after you produce these things, not before. And that is the history that we have seen across the previous F&M administrations, the previous PLP administrations. You come in, you say, I have this business idea. Sounds good, boys. Here are our concerns. This has economic impact. Produce the EIA for this. In producing your EIA, you have to show us what your environmental management plan is, what your safety protocols are before we sign off with you. And you know what? You say this is a $5 billion project. We are adults. Show us that you have that money. Show us the money or show us the funding. And then you can get this. Or show us a commitment that should you get a heads of agreement, you would get it. None of that has happened in this instance.
Something that was pointed out too, I just noticed it, it appeared, I think, just this week in the Tribune. Within the heads of agreement, it discloses that the government will speedily introduce legislation to amend the Industries Encouragement Act so that Oban can enjoy the extended period of tax concessions, which would amend a 1970s law to accommodate Oban, which could in effect give them tax breaks up to 15 years.
Well, it depends on how you read that. If you read that as the tax breaks for the life of this project, that's 90 years.
Well, I was about to say now, that's what, went on to say it could go up to 50, 45 years and beyond.
No. If they are to amend the law for the period of this heads of agreement, it's 45 years, renewable for another 45 years. So it's 90 years.
So we could all be dead, long gone.
But that's not, when you read this in its totality, the government has promised to pass any law, to change any law, to exempt these guys from any law that would prevent the execution of this agreement.
But is that not unfair now to to the existing business, existing companies who, some of which have been impacted by laws put in place to deal and to speak to these kinds of things?
Well, it would depend on, insofar as the Encouragement Act provision, it would depend on how they amend it. If they amend it for everyone,
right.
then
So if
you
it's
can make
amended
a
for
case
everyone,
you
then,
amend it for everyone, so it's not special to them.
Right.
But insofar as other businesses who have had to experience the pain of going through an EIA, of having to satisfy BES in a manner not that you consult with BES, BES tells you what you have to do, not as these guys get to do if this is upheld, because it can be challenged. And I hear one of my colleagues may be challenging it, and really someone ought to challenge it. That you get to say, look, if I want to open a dolphin facility, I have to have an EIA before I get a license, before you will say, sign an agreement with me. Well, this is the refining of petroleum products and its storage. How can you justify to somebody with a less harmful, environmentally impactful industry endeavor that they have to go through this now. This must now be the new paradigm, that the government will sign a heads of agreement with me. I do not have to show that I have the money. I do not have to show that it's not harmful to the environment. And we agree that if it is harmful, the government and I work to mitigate any harm. So I don't see how this government could have credibility with foreign direct investors unless this is the new paradigm. And if this is the new paradigm, it's a very dangerous one.
It's been, a lot of people have expressed concerns in many quarters about this. One of the first concerns that was raised had to do with the environment. You've mentioned the fact that there should have been an economic impact assessment and it should have been an environmental impact assessment known commonly as the EIA. Now, it's being said that the EIA is being done in Grand Bahama. The report, I guess by all estimations, is now about a month out or so. This is according to several reports, one of which was Deputy Prime Minister Peter Turnquist. But Joseph Darville from Save the Bays, the environmental group, said that the EIA, like many, should have been done by an independent agency, not appointed by the government or the company proposing to do the development. He calls it a gross insult to the people of the Bahamas. He says that given the magnitude, it could have a catastrophic impact on the environment and the people, referencing the existing refinery at Pindus Point and the problems that have plagued the people of that community for many, many years.
Well, Joe Darville now, I think he's from Grand Bahama, so unlike when he comes to the Providence concerning, he has a real cause. But the environmental impact assessment clause here is very curious because everyone else doesn't. In this agreement, the developer shall consult with BEST, not act on any direction from BEST. So even if you say you pick a independent person, the person who directs BEST, who directs the assessment is BEST. So you don't consult with BEST. BEST speaks directly to the persons and tell them what to produce. But the most dangerous part about this is there's a clause that the government has signed up that it has no right to terminate this heads of agreement.
That is a very dubious clause, and a lot of people have spoken.
Not dubious.
Sorry,
it's
blunt.
It's
concerned a lot of people. But before we get to that, because I have quite a bit I want to drill down into that.
But to finish Darville's point, you have this EIA, and what usually happens when you look at the Planning Subdivision Act is you provide all your documents to the board. The director of physical planning will then advertise it. And the persons like Darville and Save the Bears have an opportunity to come in, have a look at it. They don't need to accept its righteousness. They then have the ability to have professionals themselves examine the matter. There's a litigation going on right now. In the past administration, I was instructed of the matter out at Nygaard Key. And these are the same issues being canvassed there. And that is only for putting in berms to stop your beach being eroded. But there's a big issue about you have to have this information. It has to be submitted to the Ministry of Works and Town Planning. It has to be advertised to the public. The public has a right to inspect it. Having inspected it, the public has a right to get, or groups have a right to get their own opinions, and then you have a hearing. Now, what they have put in here is these people will submit it, and if you don't hear back from the government in 60 days, it's deemed to be accepted. So that must mean that they are committing to amend that act as well.
We are going to just put a pin in that and take a break. The environmental concerns are a huge part of the discussion, particularly for the type of business, where it is, a lot of other elements involved. So we're going to pick up with that portion of the discussion. We are taking our first break. We'll return with more on the record right after this.
This segment is sponsored by Percy's Island Game.
We're gonna give you a check every week for a year. Percy's Pension Plan. Bro, you hear about Percy's pension plan?
Yeah, something about $1,000 a week for a year.
That's Percy's pension plan. You could win one of 5. All you gotta do is put $20 on your Island Game account, and you have a chance to win up to 52 times.
You know something, guys? I can need one of those Percy's pension planning because with Island Game, it's surely a guarantee. Oi,
I ain't got no tension.
I got Percy's pension.
One America News Network, your leading source for the latest breaking national and international news. With nearly 4 times as many headlines as the other networks. Straight news, no speculation, no opinion, just the facts. Complete coverage 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. One America News Network, your source for credible news.
Welcome back to more On the Record. Tonight we're discussing Oban Energy's deal of a lifetime or questionable partners. My guest tonight is attorney Wayne Monroe. As we went to the break, we were talking about the environmental concerns. One of the first outcries you would have heard in this deal is the fact that a heads of agreement has been signed and the environmental impact assessment has not been completed. It's been reported that it is being done as we speak and should be ready shortly. The heads of agreement itself contains strict guidelines and fines for environmental infractions in the event of a disaster or failure to comply with the agreement. Clause 5.1 says, upon completion of the EIA, government has 60 days to provide feedback. Oban has the right to abandon the project. If government determines any portion cannot be implemented in an environmentally safe and sustainable manner, government can propose the developer take additional specific precautions and make modifications to address these concerns. Government shall not have the right to terminate the agreement because of the EIA report.
But it goes on to say that they will work with the developer to mitigate any concerns.
Why is that so concerning?
There's a difference between elimination and mitigation. The starkest example is, let us say that the environmental concern is this will cause the complete pollution of the water table from East Grand Bahama to the whole island. Well, the government and the developer must speak about mitigating it. So they can speak not about eliminating the risk of contamination to the water table, but the developer could say, well, I'm only going to contaminate this much of the water table. That's mitigation as opposed to elimination. The starkest case is, okay, we're going to emit something that may be noxious and kill 100 people. Well, we're going to mitigate that so that we reduce it to only killing 10, as opposed to eliminate it altogether. And the language is quite specific. But what is quite troubling about that is this 60-day, it's not, and this is one of Joe Darville's points, no doubt, it's not the government to advise. You know, you have the EIA, you have a board that makes the decision, but that is informed by public discussion. This was supposed to be the people's government. So the people are excluded from this whole process that impacts the people, and it's the people's time by all accounts. But the people with the existing statutory construct will not get to participate. What is even more frightening is there are 2 other things, you know. You have an EIA, fine, but you have an environmental management plan
that they are mandated to produce
after the EIA. And then there are safety protocols that they are to produce after the EIA. If the people of East Grand Bahama and Grand Bahama are to be given a fair opportunity to make representations in the decision-making process, shouldn't I not only know what the EIA says, but what the environmental management plan is and what your safety procedures are before this thing is approved.
What will be how are you going to deal with these issues?
Yes.
In other words.
Holistically, this isn't something like I'm doing crops and I use fertilizer this season and something happens so I stop using it the next season. This is something terribly serious, terribly impactful, and if the people are to have import as this government sells itself at, the people should know not only the result of an independent EIA, the people should know what the environmental management plan is and what the safety protocols
Is 60
are.
days realistically enough time for a real assessment of that and to give feedback and to go back and forth?
Not within the concept of the legal construct, because notices are given within 21 days and there are two 21-day periods in the Planning and Subdivision Act 2010, passed by the last F&M administration, of which Dr. Minnis was a cabinet minister. And so you're up to 42 days there already. And let us assume that you aren't going to trust these fellas for obvious reasons, and you want to have independent work done that isn't going to be able to be done in 19 days that remains. And it talks not in the language of the planning permission scheme. It's as if they take it that the government will change that law or exempt that from that law, which will in effect cut out public consultation on and public representation on whether the people want this there, whether the people who will be getting these 250 jobs, well, the 160 jobs, the 480 jobs, want this, whether they think it's worth the lives of everyone in that area.
How do you think, particularly from an environmental standpoint, this is going to play out? Because the groundswell has already begun against the project. Obviously, the opposition would have mounted their position on this, but you have Save the Bays, which we would have already spoken to, and then you have the Bahamas Reef Environmental Educational Foundation brief, also expressing grave concern with the impact of the refinery, specifically the cause preventing government from terminating the contract, which has given a lot of people pause. Kazarina McKinney-Lambert, who's the director of brief, says this is a huge mistake and puts the lives and livelihoods of Bahamians at risk. So is this now what's going to happen if this groundswell continues? Government is obviously locked into the deal. They can't say, well, we're out based on concerns with the EIA.
Well, I don't know that, and it would be a strictly technical legal thing to say, could the government have committed itself to this? I would be interested to know whether the Office of the Attorney General did deliver the opinion that is called for by this heads of agreement. The Office of the Attorney General is the advisor to the Crown. He's the chief Crown officer. But these chaps agreed for him to give an opinion to the other side, saying and giving an opinion that the government is locked into this. It would interest me to know if that legal opinion has already been delivered and what is its content, because this agreement also purports to exempt this business from rulings of the court, which isn't legally possible in this country. No government can do that. And so the question would be, are we locked into this? And there could be cases that say that we are not locked into this. The whole paradigm is wrong. People ought to be consulted. Firstly, do you wish this here? And the only way that you could make a sensible decision is to see what are the possible environmental effects, what is your management plan, what are your safety protocols, and then you engage the people. Brief would be concerned because there are seabeds being leased as well. There's impact to the marine life as well. So this isn't just on land, this is at sea as well.
Had this been a different project, let's say if it was for a resort out in East Grand Bahama, and the same process has been followed with the heads of agreement coming before the EIA, no economic impact assessment done that we are aware of, do you think the fallout would have been the same, or would it have been a different scenario?
It ought to be the same. And it ought to be the same because More and more today, we're understanding that economic advancement, ignoring the environmental impact of it, is disastrous. We are a low-lying country. All you needed to see was an illusory bridges washed away, roads washed away.
And on the western side of New Providence with the storm surge this week, I mean, it's a prime example.
Unless we are delusional, we must understand that yes, development comes at a price, but certainly the people ought to be consulted on whether we are willing to pay that price before you sign up to things like this. Before you agree to give away the house, you should have an assessment of what you get in return.
Okay, let's take a different approach here. I'm a Grand Bahamian. I'm sitting at home now looking at all of this unfold, but here across the bow is a project that possibly could turn things around for me. Economically, I could get jobs, there could be ancillary businesses as a result of this, and I'm looking at it from the economic perspective and going, but this is an opportunity for my island.
Well, the first thing I would do if I was a Grand Bahamian is say, there are concerns about health, concerns about this. How much is my health worth to me? And you could ask the richest people in the world who are sick, and they will tell you that the most important thing, firstly, is life, is health. So that's, if I were in Grand Bahama, I would be concerned about my health. If we're in New Providence, we could say, well, this is going to be good for the economy. If it kills some people in Grand Bahama, so be it. If you go there to work, you know you're endangering your life, so be it. If I'm in Grand Bahama, I must be concerned about how this is going to impact the environment. And then if you tell me it's going to give me all these benefits, I would want to know how. How? You're saying you have these jobs. Are they specialized jobs that you're going to say, I can't qualify for? And then you recognize that by saying these folks must pay some monies to UB for curriculum development. And then you say it's $150,000 they have to pay. That isn't much money for curriculum development. And then you say things like, to superintend whether or not they're doing things correctly, you have to have an expert. But again, it's to cost no more than $150,000. When the Ingram government approved Bahama, they understood that building a high-rise structure maybe was outside the competence of the Ministry of Works Inspectorate, so they engaged private inspectors to inspect that, and it didn't cost $150,000. You're talking millions of dollars inspecting to make
$150 a year. So that's
not $150 a year, $150 in aggregate.
Wow.
And this project is to be completed in 2030. So $150,000 over that entire period.
Do you think this deal was really born out of a sense of desperation to get things done in Grand Bahama? And do you think government is really under pressure now to produce results, particularly because Grand Bahama delivered all seats to them in the election?
Well, I would think that you should first be concerned about people's health. You shouldn't be concerned about photo ops. You shouldn't be concerned about appearances. I would say, reading the terms of this, how skewed they are, how crazy they are for government to say that we will change any law to benefit you, to say that we will make you exempt from rulings of our court, can only be born out of two possibilities, well, three really. There's either corruption, there's either extreme desperation, or there's just sheer incompetence and ignorance. Those are the three choices. I do not know which one of the three is the motivation for this, but I have never ever seen anything like this. For all that we charge former Prime Minister Ingram on for giving away the house, too much money to Lattice, too much money for Bahama, being too impetuous, I think if he were to read this, he would wonder if these fellas took complete loss of their senses. I have never seen anything like this before in my entire life. In my preparation for the NIGOD key matter, I've never seen a proposition put forward like this in any other country in the world.
Interesting. Very unfortunate that we could not get someone from government to come on tonight to speak to some of these things and to answer some of these questions. I think it is a growing concern, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. Well, having said that, we are at the halfway mark in our show. Our topic this evening is Oban Energy's deal of a lifetime or questionable partners. My guest, Wayne Monroe. When we return, we'll have more on this discussion. Stay with us.
Every day, people suffer from some sort of joint pain.
To put on my socks, to bend over, to put on, I used to have, it was really pain. I don't have it anymore.
If you've been living in pain and you're tired of trying products that just don't work, you are not alone. Today, 1.5 billion people worldwide are living in chronic pain. Don't let pain deny you the life you deserve. Join hundreds of thousands of Omega XL users that have chosen to fight inflammation and get rid of pain. Now they're living a pain-free life to the fullest thanks to Omega XL, the all-natural anti-inflammatory that has more available omega-3s than regular fish oil. Get more benefits in a powerful gel capsule that is smaller, easier to swallow, and more convenient. Switch to Omega XL and experience results you can feel. Put an end to your pain with Omega XL. Visit your local pharmacy or health food stores and get your Omega XL today.
Welcome back to the second half of tonight's show. Our topic is Oban Energy's deal of a lifetime or questionable partners. We continue our discussions with my guest, Wayne Monroe. I want to now focus a little bit on another unsettling aspect of this, and this is the non-executive chairman's involvement, who's been called an ambassador to the company, Peter Krieger, who pleaded guilty to organized fraud in 2006. He's also alleged to have owed the IRS about $600,000 and a lot of other charges. Other company executives have said to have exaggerated their qualifications and experience. The company's website has since scrubbed that information. Again, raising even more concerns with the public about this deal and the individuals behind it. I mean, it's one thing to have a deal that people are questioning, but when you come down now to even the people involved who are presented as unsavory characters, here we go with another red flag.
Well, the end result of it, the heads of agreement, is probably colored by that involvement. And I have said before in the press that if you can't get the signing ceremony right, God help you on the execution of the agreement. One would have thought that this was something that these folk had agreement in principle, couldn't fulfill the conditions for the agreement in principle. That should have been your first alert, eh? Mm-hmm. And then going forward, you have an obligation to deal with whoever you're dealing with. And this thing about the previous government having given them an agreement in principle doesn't fly, because the previous government hired a lot of people who these chaps fired.
We're gonna come to that too.
And so that's not the answer, but the frightening part, separate and apart from these fellas, is this government has agreed that this agreement is assignable. So I don't have any money. I get the agreement, the government to sign away the life of Bahamian people, and then I go shopping it to other people. And the government has agreed that if they say, we are signing this agreement to company X, that the government has 30 days from notification to make a decision, or they're deemed to have agreed to the assignment. Now, bearing in mind that that assignment is likely to be to people outside of this jurisdiction, is 30 days sufficient time to investigate these folks. If you've ever done an application to the Bahamas Investment Authority, it's a very thick application. They're supposed to climb in your mouth, through your intestines, out the other end, and then do that for all of your children too, so that we know we are comfortable with these people doing business in the Bahamas. But not only did the Bahamas government, by all accounts, drop the ball on signing off with these folks, but in signing off with these folks, they've agreed that this group of fellas can hand this baton on to anybody else, and in 30 days' time, they're deemed approved unless you can find some reason not to approve them. So not only have we bought a pig in the poke with these people, but we have committed to having it handed on to whoever and have 30 days to get to the bottom of it. I can't remember now the period of automatic time for approval of work permits under this new regime, but there seems to be a lack of understanding that you have to check people out. True checking these people out would have been as simply as Googling them as the media did. So you wouldn't have required 30 days to find out that, this crew shouldn't be signing with you. But certainly, you should not commit to accepting a new group of people within 30 days of being advised if you can't find anything wrong with them.
So, by all estimations, that is simply not enough time, as you see it, to do a proper investigation?
On foreign persons.
Well, the signed agreement on the 19th was not signed by Krieger, but instead by the Oban president, even though there was this so-called signing in cabinet where we witnessed Krieger sign. But apparently he signed the space designated for the president, didn't indicate he was signing on his behalf. There's video footage confirming the signing. No one, including the prime minister, made mention that he was signing for the president. Some senior FNMs have said privately that the whole ordeal is quite embarrassing, and particularly now with the fact that the video, everything has gone viral, but you have a heads of agreement that came to Parliament with a different signature than was signed in front of the media and in front of the public. What, optics aside, is that legal?
Well, put it this way, what is worse is it is said in the media that Krieger signed, didn't purport to sign his name.
He signed
purported to sign the other chap's name. This company is an LLC organized in Florida. It's a corporate entity. You can potentially sign somebody else's name by virtue of a power of attorney if they empower you to act in their name.
So I can empower somebody to sign on my behalf?
Yes.
So that can
And if I don't say in your name, the person can sign my name.
Okay.
But with companies, you don't deal with power of attorneys. The company will, by resolution, empower an officer or director to sign. So if the president can't be there, they'll empower somebody else. And so this concept, this explanation by power of attorney doesn't really get off the ground, given how corporate structures work. What that basically says is that we want a photo op so much, for one reason or the other, we're prepared to sit down and sign off or have signed off a fictitious document if you buy the righteousness of this isn't the real document. The problem, though, with the document that was produced is if that's purported to be executed in the Bahamas on the same day by a different person, was he in fact in the Bahamas?
Right, because it has the same signing date as the 19th.
And the same permanent secretary, the cabinet secretary.
So the same individual signed both documents same day.
So if you say, and you hear all kinds of things, and it's sad that the government, who was 35-4, didn't see fit to defend itself to the public, because they might say something you've been hearing, oh, the fella's flight was delayed and he came in late. Why not just push the press conference and the signing back? until he arrived. If he was delayed and wasn't arriving till the next day, why not have the signing the next day? There is no sensible explanation that I can see for having to have it at that time if the fella is delayed. So real question is, was this guy ever in the Bahamas to sign this document? And if he was, why did you see the need to go through with this farce instead of just waiting for him? And if he never came into the Bahamas to sign, how can you produce a document purportedly signed by him in the Bahamas to Parliament and to the Bahamian people? You know, it's...
Does this now fall under the realm of misleading Parliament?
Well, listen, I can understand how things happen, you know. I'm dead desperate, things tough. I need to make the news. I need to make a particular newscast. So to do it in here, let's just go with whoever here. Let's just sign. But when you are challenged, surely, since this government says it believes in transparency, come clean with the Bahamian people.
Explain. What happened aside, what was Krieger really the right person to have there as well? I mean, when you just look at on the optics of it and just how it looked, there's a man who has numerous legal actions hanging over him or was involved in actions against him, and he's sitting next to the Prime Minister signing off on this agreement.
Well, how must that make us look internationally? If you were a foreign direct investor and you say, look at what has happened, what would you think of the Bahamas? What would you think of this administration? You'd think they're a bunch of jokers. We could go and sell them, you know, salt water.
Show up. Well, we are at the point of our final break. We've still got quite a bit more to discuss on this deal. Stay with us. We are back right after this.
We're gonna give you a check every week for a year.
Bro, you hear about Percy's pension plan?
Yeah, something about $1,000 a week for a year.
That's Percy's pension plan. You could win one of 5. All you gotta do is put $20 on your Island Game account, and you have a chance to win up to 52 times.
You know something, guys? I can need one of those Percy's pension planning because with Island Game, it's surely a guarantee.
Oi, I ain't got no tension, I got Percy's pension.
Counting right this easy train at Percy's Island Game.
It's a wealth of entertainment with a touch of class and sophistication. A journey of the senses with an unparalleled sense of style. Discover hidden adventures that are cradled in the palms of paradise. Traverse the annals of human history and explore the farthest reaches of exclusivity. It's an excursion that few can afford, but all should experience. And it's only on AWE.
Welcome back. This is the final segment of this episode. We are discussing Oban Energy's deal of a lifetime or questionable partners. My guest, Wayne Monroe. Kendia Ferguson, Director of Investments with the Bahamas Investment Authority, told the Tribune that she's satisfied that Krieger, the non-executive chairman, is just an ambassador. She went on to say they perform checks and balances on beneficial owners of companies that seek to invest in the country. Krieger has not been disclosed, though, as a beneficial owner. Bahamas Investment Authority playing a role in all of this. Does their participation at this level carry any merit, or is it just all too late?
You have to listen exactly to what Kendia says. She says he's not been disclosed as a beneficial owner. you're concerned about the gravitas, the character of beneficial owners. It would be interesting for them to disclose who are the beneficial owners. There can be no secrecy in that. There could be no need for privacy in that. And one of the conditions imposed by the previous administration is show us that you have this money. So can the Bahamas Investment Authority say that these folks have shown them that they have this money or they have the financing signed up? There's a whole checklist of
They
things
have said that they
go
do, and they will present that bank letter.
A bank letter. Some of the great frauds that you see prosecuted emanate from bank letters being produced. Plain and simple. Either you can show that you are good for this money or you can't. And if you can show it, the government should have already seen it before it signed off on this. That was one of the conditions that the previous government said, you have to demonstrate to us before we will get to the point of signing such a document with you.
The Prime Minister has said that the previous administration had no objection to the company and did due diligence. The opposition says we did not enter into a heads of agreement with them. This is, of course, Leader of the Opposition, Davis. Says to his recollection, a letter indicating approval for the project was issued subject to compliance with certain requirements. In 2016, the National Economic Council advised Oban that approval was given for a 20 million barrel capacity oil refinery in Grand Bahama, subject to meeting requirements of the Ministries of Works, Environment, Physical Planning, etc. Also agreed to the issuance of work permits, but no deal was ever signed. They needed to prove that they could finance the project. Davis says that it was approved in principle, but basically left now in the hands of technocrats.
Yeah. And what you then have is subject to satisfying certain conditions. Do you know what this heads of agreement says? This heads of agreement says this is it. It says this is our agreement, and the Bahamas government agrees to do all that is necessary to implement and carry into effect the agreement, particularly without limiting it. The government is to procure any acts, consents, approval of Parliament necessary or convenient under any statute or law to carry it into effect. So quite apart from you having approval subject to satisfying these governmental agencies, they have an approval for it. And the Bahamas government agrees to do whatever is necessary to carry it into effect. And to me, that's a different quality of a thing. That's like saying, I will let you build my house if you could build it safely, as compared to saying, I have a deal for you to build my house, and if you can't build it safely, I'll change the safety standards. And that is, in fact, what they have done. But this attempt to say, we simply followed on after what you did, is rich coming from a government that says they have to scrutinize everything that the previous administration did, down to hiring $250 a week workers. So you are second guessing the hiring of a $250 a week worker, and you just taking it as righteous and gospel, a $5 billion project. That makes no sense and logic. It's a foolish thing to have said, and it doesn't augur well for governance.
Your opinion on what could possibly have gone wrong, or what is happening at the cabinet level for something like this to get to the state? How could we have a heads of agreement with so many loopholes and could seemingly be so detrimental in so many ways? To get to this point, where's the senior advisement? Where's the council? Where's the no prime minister, no cabinet? We can't do this, or this is not the way that we do things.
Well, there aren't any loopholes in this. This is the deal of a lifetime for Oban. They get every single thing they want. There are no loopholes for them to exploit. They are plain in black and white, in writing. They are part of the tax. Now, how much advice impacts you depends on how much you seek and take advice. Remember in our last program when we spoke about the speaker, where the speaker was not seeking the advice of Mr. Tynes, somebody who would have had a wealth of it.
Exactly.
As I said then, you know, Bob Marley, the Bible says, in an abundance of water, the fool is thirsty. So I don't know what advice there were, unless they fired all of the advisors from the previous government, because when the PLP came in, we didn't dismiss the advisors that
But
were
you
in
have
place.
people who are around the cabinet table who seemingly who have been involved in these kind of negotiations. You have the cabinet secretary, who's not new. You have the likes of a Brent Simonet, who has sat around, who's been deputy prime minister, who's sat around the cabinet table, negotiated these kinds of agreements in the past.
Yeah, we don't know what his interest is. There's some land involved there, some construction involved there. I don't know if this suits his interest. I don't know if they solicit and take advice. What troubles me the most is if the Attorney General agreed to give an opinion to the other side's clients, to say the government is obligated to do this, and to put that in writing. I don't know if they are seeking advice or they, having sought it, are taking it. I just don't know. In the one issue we discussed previously, it was clear that the advice not only was not sought, but when it was offered gratuitously by Mr. Tynes, it was roundly rejected and the offerer was attacked. So they just may not be seeking it, they may be deprecating it, and they may be deprecating the persons who are giving it.
Oban has hit back in a paid ad, and the Tribune said, "Don't mind the noise in the market, you mind the price of the fish," using an old Bahamian adage. A tide of opportunity for Grand Bahama, says the company. It's on the ground already, engaging companies for coastal and environmental processes. Is this at all salvageable? Is there a happy medium somewhere in the future where the Bahamian people are satisfied with what is happening, and the company could be satisfied with what they will get out at the end of the day?
Did you?
Well, I understand what you said. Of course, they are happy with
what you have just read is that they haven't even completed an EIA, and they're engaging people to do work, which means engaging me to do particular work. They told that they have just advertised to the Bahamian people that we don't really care about any of your processes. There should be a lot of money. You little island Negroes and Caucasians and Conky Joe people should be happy we bring in our money, because we don't care if you are concerned about your environment. We are going ahead and doing works. A lot of us got here, our ancestors got here, because of people with that same attitude. I do not know who advised them to say to us that we don't care about if you're brief, we don't care about if you're concerned about coastal works, whether it can be done safely. We got these people to sign up to say we can do whatever we like, and we're going ahead doing it. And if it kills you, so be it. We will make money from it. That's the don't mind the noise in the marketplace true adage. It's an adage that talks about the power of money. And if they have just told us that they're motoring around on the power of money, might they be suggesting that corruption is the motivation for this heads of agreement, not desperation and not naivety? The government must have been pleased with that advert, and so I must accept that money is what is the cause of this heads of agreement.
Attorney Wade Monroe, thank you very much for spending this time with us this evening. This has been very insightful. I again would like to say that we did extend an opportunity to the government, to the FNM, to come on and to address some of these concerns, but they declined the offer. I'll throw it out there again. We are available if you would come. The invitation is still there, so hopefully somebody is watching who will say to somebody somewhere please come and talk to the Bahamian people and explain this deal. Wayne, once again, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. We hope that you've enjoyed tonight's show. Special thanks to Attorney Wayne Monroe, who has come on to represent the PLP, my producer, technical staff, and of course you, the audience, for watching week after week. Be sure and join us for more On the Record next week, same time, same place. We'll see you then.